our big focus tonight. There are aggressors, there are terrorists, and then there is Asim Munir, the self-styled Field Marshal and Army Chief of Pakistan. He is someone who's the architect of multiple terror attacks on India, including the most recent Pahalgam terror attack, where innocent civilians were butchered just for being Hindus. He is someone who leads a rogue army, whose very existence revolves around keeping tensions with India alive. He is the army chief of a country that has used terrorism as an instrument of state policy for decades, exporting terrorism not only across the border, but in fact, far and wide around the globe. But Asim Munir is more than just that. He is also someone who believes he can brazenly issue nuclear threats to India and blackmail the entire world and get away with it. It's not surprising, therefore, that a former Pentagon official has called Pakistan Army Chief Asim Munir Osama bin Laden in a suit. Former Pentagon official Michael Rubin has lashed out at Asim Munir, saying Pakistan is behaving like a rogue state with its endless warmongering. Rubin then went on to compare Pakistan's de facto military ruler with Osama bin Laden, the slain Al-Qaeda chief who was once the most wanted man in the world, the terrorist who orchestrated the 9/11 terror attack on the United States of America. Rubin added that Munir's recent remarks were reminiscent of what the world has heard from the Islamic State. Rubin said, Asim Munir is Osama bin Laden in a suit. No amount of concession is going to change his ideology or the Pakistani elite that he represents. Within 30 minutes of when Asim Munir made those comments, he should have been ushered out, taken to Tampa International Airport and flown out of the United States. While speaking in the United States over the weekend, Asim Munir thundered, and I quote, "We are a nuclear nation. If we think we are going down, we'll take half the world down with us." The comments were made, believe it or not, in the presence of top US military officials in Florida. India has strongly condemned Munir's threat of nuclear war and said nuclear saber-rattling is Pakistan's stock in trade, and it is regrettable that such remarks were made from the soil of a friendly third country. The former Pentagon official, Michael Rubin, has stated, Pakistan's threats on American soil are completely unacceptable. Americans look at terrorism through the lens of grievance. They don't understand the ideological underpinnings of many terrorists. He added, Pakistan's nuclear threats could provide cover for terrorist elements to go rogue with nuclear weapons. Significantly, Rubin also says that Asim Munir's remarks are raising questions in many people's minds about whether Pakistan can fulfill the responsibilities of being a state. Rubin said the Field Marshal's rhetoric is reminiscent of what we've heard from the Islamic State. It's coming near time when in a future US administration, SEAL teams should enter Pakistan to secure its nuclear weapons because the alternative is simply too great to bear. Rubin also says Pakistan should be the first major non-NATO ally to be listed as a state sponsor of terrorism and should not be a member of the US Central Command anymore. Rubin goes on to say Asim Munir should be persona non grata in the United States and never get an American visa along with any Pakistani official till Pakistan explains itself and apologizes. But Pakistan, being the terror state that it is, cannot help itself. It's not just Asim Munir who's busy issuing threats to India. Pakistani politician Bilawal Bhutto too is singing the same tune. First, Munir threatened to take down half the world if Islamabad faced an existential threat in a future war with India. He threatened to blow up Indian dams with missiles. This after India suspended the Indus Water Treaty in the wake of the Pahalgam terror attack. Now, Bilawal Bhutto, the former Pakistan foreign minister, says, and I quote, if India continues to suspend the Indus Water Treaty, then Pakistan would have no choice but to consider war. He said Pakistanis are strong enough for war to get back all 6 rivers. If India continues on this path, it leaves us with no choice except to consider all options, including the possibility of war, to protect our national interests. As we said, Pakistan is not just a rogue state, it's a terror state. Terrorism and nuclear blackmail are the only currency it deals in. But far from cracking down on this terror state, US President Donald Trump has been going out of his way to woo Pakistan. In the month of June, Trump hosted a luncheon for Pakistan Army Chief Asim Munir at the White House. Subsequently, the US Central Command Commander General Michael Rubin lavished fulsome praise on Pakistan, calling it a phenomenal partner in counter-terrorism. As we said, over the weekend, Asim Munir undertook his second visit to the United States in 2 months to attend the farewell for General Kurilla. Munir abused that opportunity to issue a nuclear threat not just to India, but also to the world. And now, instead of condemning Munir's nuclear blackmail, the United States has further rewarded the terror state of Pakistan by labeling the Baluchistan Liberation Army, or the BLA, and its alias the Majid Brigade as a foreign terrorist organization. The BLA is a separatist movement that has been fighting for the liberation of the strife-torn Baluchistan province from Pakistan, a province whose people have been subjected to extreme cruelty and oppression by the Pakistan army and government. The question we're asking on Global Pulse tonight is this: just when will the world, especially the United States of America, wake up to the fact that Pakistan is a terror state that continues to endanger the safety of civilized countries around the world, not just India's? Just when will the United States stop flirting with and rewarding the terror state and start acting against it for threatening the security of the entire world with its nuclear blackmail? When will the US wake up from its slumber and realize that this is the same Pakistan which sheltered Osama bin Laden, the mastermind of the 9/11 terror attack, for years? Remember where the US found Osama after spending years and years and a fortune hunting for him around the world and launching invasions of Afghanistan and Iraq? They found him in Abbottabad, just outside Rawalpindi, the military headquarters of Pakistan. Just what does Donald Trump think he's doing, lionizing Asim Munir and playing footsie with Pakistan? That he can be an enabler of a terror state like Pakistan on the one hand, and on the other, hope to win a Nobel Peace Prize? Just when will we see the end of this absolute farce?
Asim Munir is Osama bin Laden in a suit. The fact of the matter is, there is no amount of concession that can be given to Pakistan that is going to change the ideology of Asim Munir or the Pakistani elite which he represents.
देखिए, पाकिस्तान आर्मी चीफ की जो ज़बान है और जो धमकियां वो दे रहे हैं भारत को, वो कंडेमनेबल है। और अफसोसनाक बात यह है कि भारत यूएस का एक स्ट्रेटेजिक पार्टनर है और यूनाइटेड स्टेट्स की सरजमीन में बैठकर वो भारत को न्यूक्लियर थ्रेट दे रहे हैं और बिल्कुल ही एक सड़क छाप आदमी की तरह की जबान इस्तेमाल कर रहे हैं। तो हमारा मानना यह है कि एक पॉलिटिकल मोदी गवर्नमेंट की तरफ से एक पॉलिटिकल रिस्पांस आना चाहिए। जैसे एमईए का स्टेटमेंट आया, और साथ ही साथ हमको ये बात समझना है कि पाकिस्तान की आर्मी से और इनके डीप स्टेट से हमको हमेशा खतरा रहेगा।
हम इस जद्दोजहद में मुझे आपकी जरूरत है। हमने सब एक होके मोदी की बर्बारियत पे, मोदी के इस हमले के बारे में, मोदी के इस इरादे के बारे में आवाज उठाना है और जद्दोजहद करना है ताकि इस जुल्म को भी हम रोक सकें। मैं जानता हूं कि आप में इतना ताकत है, इस मुल्क के अवाम में इतना ताकत है कि जंग की सूरत हो तो जंग में भी हम इनका मुकाबला कर सकते हैं और जो आपके 6 के 6 दरिया है वो वापस हासिल भी कर सकते हैं।
All right, We have a lot to discuss tonight. Let's go straight across to our panel of experts. And we have a terrific panel on Global Pulse tonight. Joining me on the show is Velina Chakarova. She's a geopolitical strategist and an author from Austria. Thanks very much, Velina, for joining us. Also with me on the show is Lieutenant General Satish Dua. He is the former Chief of Integrated Defence Staff and 15 Corps Commander, the man behind the famous Uri surgical strikes that were carried out by the Indian Army. So thank you so much to you as well for joining me. A quick heads up to our viewers, later on the show, we're going to be joined by Ambassador G. Parthasarathi, former Indian High Commissioner to Pakistan, and David Vance, British political commentator and author. All right, let me kick off the show with Velina Chakarova and Lieutenant General Satish Dua. Velina Chakarova, if I could begin with you. Former Pentagon official Michael Rubin has described the Pakistan Army Chief Asim Munir as Osama bin Laden in a suit. He says very accurately that Asim Munir is Osama bin Laden in a suit. There is no amount of concession that's going to change his ideology or the Pakistani elite that he represents. Within 30 minutes of when Asim Munir made those comments, issuing a nuclear threat to India and the world, he should have been ushered out, taken to Tampa International Airport and flown out of the United States of America. Instead, what we are witnessing, frankly, is Pakistan being repeatedly rewarded by the United States of America. What is your take on what the former Pentagon official has said and the constant threats that are emanating from Pakistan? Not to mention the fact that the latest threat from Asim Munir was made from American soil.
Thank you for inviting me to your show. Now, former Pentagon official Rubin rightfully coined this phrase that you also quoted on the show, because basically it embodies the same extremist mindset that we have known from the past. So what is currently happening is more or less emboldening this mindset that is omnipresent in a large part of the main leadership in Pakistan. That's, of course, the military umbrella and the core of it. And what happened, and I think that we still don't understand the long-term effects of this nuclear blackmail that happened on behalf of Pakistan. First and foremost, we should also say that it's not the first case of nuclear blackmail. Let me just use a historical precedent from the last 3 years on behalf of the Russian president, who also used nuclear blackmail. That is the threat to use nuclear weapon without the intention to use it, to cause a psychological effect. And I think that Pakistan has learned a lesson, because in this intermediary period of international relations, amid emerging Cold War 2.0, obviously between China and United States, middle powers are now trying to capitalize also by using nuclear blackmail as a powerful psychological weapon. And right now, India, unfortunately, is falling victim to the use of nuclear blackmail by Pakistan, because Pakistan is thinking that because of its very strong and deep relationship with China, and now the newly emerged effort on behalf of this leadership in Washington to lure Pakistan away from China, at least partially, that Pakistan has all these tools and, let's say, this flexibility, geopolitical flexibility, to flex muscles regionally with India. And that, I think, is the long-term effect I'm pointing to, that we are still not aware of, because it's not just about a narrative, it's not just about a single statement, it's about the long-term ripple effects that such statements create. Pakistan has for decades institutionalized terrorism. We know that for sure. And there have been plenty of cases throughout the decades, in the time of Cold War, after Cold War, and now, as I said, amid the emerging Second Cold War. So that means that this foreign policy toolbox is going to be reused once again. And here we are, not just in terms of the South Asian dynamics, but I would argue in terms of global dynamics when it comes to nuclearization, when it comes to the arms race in both nuclear and conventional domain. I think that Pakistan is believing that it has a strong geopolitical card to play right now. But let's not be fooled about the fact that it might be short term, but long term it doesn't have the cards because it is politically, economically, and socially incohesive and more or less not just a rogue state, but a failed state on many occasions.
You're quite right. Pakistan has a long history of terrorism and nuclear blackmail, and it's a threat not just to India but to the entire world. Let's remind ourselves of what Asim Munir said from American soil this weekend. He said, if we are going down, we will take down half the world with us. Lieutenant General Satish Dua, come in here. You're, of course, somebody who understands the machinations of this terror state better than most others. Since we're quoting what this former Pentagon official Michael Rubin has said, calling Asim Munir very rightly Osama bin Laden in a suit, he's also said the field marshal's rhetoric is reminiscent of what we've heard from the Islamic State. Now perhaps we are nearing a time where the US will need to intervene to secure Pakistan's nuclear weapons. He then goes on to say that Pakistan needs to be listed as a state sponsor of terrorism. It cannot be a member of the US Central Command anymore. And Asim Munir should be persona non grata in the USA and should never get an American visa again. My question to you is, sir, correct me if I'm wrong, but this is really the first time that somebody has used American soil to issue a nuclear threat against a third country. And here, like I keep saying, it's not just India, he's really threatening the entire world. What is Donald Trump, the President of the United States, thinking, lionizing Asim Munir? We've not heard a single statement so far from the Trump administration condemning what Asim Munir said on American soil. Shouldn't that condemnation have come by now?
You're right, Neha. It should have. But let's just delve into the fact that why hasn't it? I think for the past couple of months, when Asif, the Pakistan Army Chief Asim Munir had that lunch with President Trump and a 2 hour long meeting, it started right from there. On that very day, he tried to invite President Trump tried to invite Prime Minister Modi also, who was in Canada, to join. But so we don't know how that conversation went, but we know that there was a conversation that took place. So we know the results are clear. And that very day, I think it started rankling President Trump because he expected both to play ball. Then, and that is the reason why we got into those tariffs and other things. But what worsened the situation was when the Pakistan Army Chief Asim Munir openly recommended President Trump for the Nobel Peace Prize, saying that he stopped the hostilities between India and Pakistan, and whereas India, to put it bluntly, actually rubbished his claim. And the Prime Minister Modi said it in Parliament that there was no world leader interfered. So again, it rankled President Trump, who's been wanting that he, as a proponent of peace, he says that he's brought about peace in a few different conflicts, and somehow he's not been successful, but he wants to get to that. So on one hand, it was that personal thing that rankled him. On the other, Pakistan has always been a frontline state for the US, and I mean I must hats off to Pakistan. Their propaganda machinery, they managed to show to their audience, to the domestic audience, they managed to show Operation Sindoor was a victory. where we got them to their knees in 4 days, less than 4 days. Can you believe it? In 1980, 1971 war, where Pakistan was bifurcated into two countries and 93,000 soldiers laid down their arms in a formal surrender ceremony televised all over the world. Yet in Pakistan today, they talk of 1971 as a victory. So that's what I said. They played very well. They have played the United States so well that, despite the fact that you also mentioned, when after launching a 10-year war, 10 years later the US forces found Osama bin Laden in the midst of Pakistan, near to the military academy, and so still they managed to pose themselves as a frontline state. Yes, they have their advantages of a geopolitical location. They give them bases, they give them facilities. There are personal issues, the crypto sort of
Yes.
deals that the President Trump's family has had in Pakistan, the access to minerals and oil, whatever they may be, not yet
So-called oil
proven, though.
reserves.
Yeah, that's what I said. So not yet proven, so so-called reserves, and
Yes.
so there are several layers to this, but not least is the fact that, on the other hand, India is not sort of going and kissing the ring. India is not agreeing to. We, for example, we bought S-400 from a missile system from Russia and used it very effectively during Operation Sindoor. We bought it against the threat of CAATSA sanctions being imposed on India. Then we went ahead against the US sanctions on Russia. We are continuing to buy Russian oil. So India is asserting itself. India has sort of arrived, maybe a big word, but India is asserting its own strategic autonomy. Now that is something which is not being liked by President Trump, when Japan, South Korea, others have actually gone and kissed the ring. So on both these show a stark contrast how Pakistan is behaving, and that is why US, emboldened by the US, I won't call it US response, because the United States sees through it, but it is the Trump administration which is
Yes.
causing up to the Pakistan Army Chief, because Army Chief is virtually the leader of Pakistan, and in so doing, it has emboldened the Pakistan Army Chief to make such a statement, such a, I would say, a rant. We will take down half the world. We will start bombing them from east and work our way to west. I think that is more of his insecurity, because we, India, have called their nuclear bluff in 2016 when we launched the surgical strike, in 2019 when we launched the Balakot airstrike, and in Operation Sindoor very effectively in multiple locations. So now he's trying to raise the nuclear bogey again, more for his
Yes.
domestic audience.
I guess all they can deploy now is nuclear threat and blackmail, something that they're past masters at. Um, and you've made some excellent points, sir. I think most would agree that President Trump is acting out of pique. But does he realize that he's playing with fire? And I'll put that question to Velina Chakarova. Velina, you know, the question that people here in India are asking is, fine, we understand that Donald Trump is very upset that India refused to give him credit for the ceasefire between India and Pakistan, and India refused to nominate him for a Nobel Peace Prize, unlike Pakistan, and India refuses to kiss the ring, as the general put it. Donald Trump seems to be very upset, but really, for the sake of your wounded ego, how far can you go in emboldening a terror state which is a threat to the entire world? And my question really is, can Donald Trump really expect to flirt with a terror state like Pakistan, rewarded repeatedly on the one hand, and still hope to win the Nobel Peace Prize? I mean, this is all sounding like an absolute joke. Isn't it a complete farce?
Well, you will be surprised to learn how much personal ego is actually involved in power politics. And indeed, this was a major issue that triggered Trump's reaction, because Trump so far has initiated so many ceasefires around the globe. I mean, we stopped counting them, right? And he has mediated peace efforts. And then suddenly this message comes out that he apparently had also kind of mediated a ceasefire between India and Pakistan, which in the Indian side vehemently denied. So we have like two versions of the story. And up until today, the Indian government is refusing to accept that there has been an active US role in the ceasefire. And there are two versions to what happened after the escalation between Pakistan and India. The second point is that in this case, I will argue that Pakistan has cynically massaged Trump's ego and ambitions to receive the Nobel Peace Prize, and has bandwagoned on those nations that prior to Pakistan have also nominated him for the Peace Prize. And I think that this is also a major variable that we need to understand is now playing a role. I mean, back to your question, whether the Pakistani stance on terrorism, indirect support and direct networks in the region and beyond would be an obstacle by, I mean, let's say, given the fact that Pakistan is nominating Trump for the Peace Prize, I wouldn't actually, let's say, exclude the possibility that this would not really play a role. Right now, we are in a completely different game, realpolitik game. Everybody, small or big, is trying to maximize their gains amid this bifurcation of the global order, amid the skyrocketing tensions between China and Russia on the one hand, because they are already acting together. And I would argue that a third variable here is also the very fact that India has successfully managed, and I must say, prior to Trump's election, the normalization of the relations with China, which for the time being right now is geopolitically a smart move for the sake of the own economic growth, for the sake of the own national interests. No matter the long-term strategic rivalry, that's without a doubt still on the agenda. So we have India, which is very, very assertive on the global arena, which doesn't like and accept other countries, no matter how big and important, to tell it what kind of positions it should develop on the global arena. Think of another very important variable, which is the Russian oil. And by the way, let me be very, very clear for our audience that no other major exporters in the world are able right now and willing to cover for the Russian oil that would be for some reason excluded from the global energy mix. So here we have another duplicity and hypocrisy on behalf of the US and the West when it comes to the Russian oil supply to India.
I couldn't agree more. Let's remind ourselves that China is the largest buyer of Russian oil in the world. And guess what Donald Trump has done? He has decided to pause the tariffs on China for another 3 months, hoping to get a trade deal with China. And then he thanks President Xi as he writes about it on the social media, while he continues to hurl insult after insult at India, all in the name of Russia, even though most Indians believe that his recent acts of desperation have nothing to do with trade, have nothing to do with Russia, and everything to do with his personal vendetta. And therefore, ironically, Donald Trump, whether he likes it or not, may end up pushing India closer to Russia and who knows, maybe even to China. Don't forget, Prime Minister Modi is going to be in China later this month to attend the SCO summit, and President Putin is expected to visit India later this year. Lieutenant General Satish Dua, sir, I want you to expand on that very interesting point that you made earlier, and I think most experts would agree with you, sir. Perhaps there is no nation that is better at playing the United States of America than our wily neighbor. This is a country that has exported terrorism for decades now. This is a country that has been home to some of the most dreaded terror outfits in the world. This is a country that shielded, as we keep saying, Osama bin Laden, as Americans looked for that terrorist all over the world and launched war after war. And yet, this country projects itself as a frontline ally in the fight against terror, and the United States it sort of keeps lauding them for it. I mean, what is, the secret, the great secret behind Pakistan's great game and propaganda? I think they are a case study.
You're right, Neha. I openly admitted that it's a case study. We need to learn from them. Because whether it is to do with their geostrategic location, yes, of course, they have a location to sell. Because located as they are, uh, US needs Pakistan to be able to keep a watch over Afghanistan, uses bases for Iran, which they did recently, as a bulwark against China. Not so much now. It was initially not so much now because China and Pakistan are very close. But who knows how geopolitics changes, and at some later date, maybe India. So they would want to keep a watch on India. So now that is one aspect of it. Uh, but the other aspect, for example, they have whether it is the lobby, the agency that has been hired was the ex bodyguard of President Trump, uh, running an agency, a lobbying company or agency, whatever it's called. So on all fronts, they have managed to, and then like I spoke earlier, kowtowing to whatever President Trump has been saying that he brokered the peace. He may have spoken to Pakistan. He didn't speak to India. We know that. So he may have spoken to Pakistan, or someone from the Trump administration may have spoken to Pakistan. But the fact remains that Pakistan asked for a ceasefire. Now India has not supported President Trump's claims, whereas he's already the Pakistan Army Chief has recommended him for a Nobel Peace Prize. So all these things put together, I think, on one hand, are the cold facts of their location, but on the other hand, while they might be sort of lobbying very well, what Mr. Rubin says is no matter. There are several others who recognize Pakistan for what it is. But then what matters today is the Trump administration. So they know where to focus on. And uh, I think the they are trying to actually make hay while the sun shines, because today, for different reasons that some of which we've already discussed, uh, the relations between, I won't say US and India, I will use correctly say it is between the Trump administration and the present Modi government. The relations at the present moment are a little turbulent. We are large democracies. These administrations don't last. They will be there for their terms, and we know President Trump cannot sort of come back for another re-election. So
Let's hope not.
uh, yes,
With Trump,
we,
you never
yes,
know. He has even
we know
expressed his
when
desire for a
yes,
third term. To hell with the
true.
Constitution.
True. So, but the point is, at the present moment, he's the president. His administration calls the shots. And like you spoke with Velina earlier, and you brought out how they dis- they are that is Trump administration is not happy with India not kissing the ring and so many other things, but with China, they are okay. While China is buying more oil from Russia than India is, while they are okay, is I heard Vice President Vance reply to a reporter in the US, and he said well, our relation with China, the dynamic is very different. I'm paraphrasing. He says something like this,
Yeah.
words to the effect: our dynamic
And
is
it's
very
more
different. What
complicated.
is more
Yes.
complicated? Yes, that's it. So why? What is it?
In other
We want to
words,
know what.
it'll hurt America more. I think that is what he could not say.
So the supply chains of critical material, critical minerals, supply chain of some of the strategic materials are something that is going to hurt US so much that they can't do it. But also the fact, I am sorry for harking back on the same point again. Also the fact that uh, China is not making any statements that is ruffling uh, President Trump personally. India or Indian leadership seems to have rattled him personally. Because if you
May I
remember,
just
till last month, he was making similar noises about India. Oh, we will have a, I know it, we will slap tariffs on India. India charges a lot of tariffs, the most tariff nation. But we will have a big, beautiful deal. People are working at it. No, he used to talk about that. But after President Modi's speech in the parliament, where he said that
Yes.
no leader called him, I think it all started going downhill from
It
that
all
point.
started going downhill. In fact, within 24 hours, Trump
Yes.
decided to impose 25% tariffs on India and then made it worse by following it up with an additional punitive tariff of 25% for buying Russian oil. And it's not just the tariffs, frankly, it's the language that has been absolutely offensive, belittling, rude, and certainly not becoming for the President of the United States of America. He's even called India a dead economy. Let me now go back to Velina Chakarova at this point. Velina, you know, even though the general says that relationships between countries go beyond just leaders. But fact of the matter is that many observers feel that Donald Trump has dealt such a heavy blow to the bilateral relationship between India and the US that it's reached its lowest point in some 30 years. This is probably the lowest point in the bilateral relationship since the sanctions that were imposed by the United States on India after its 1998 nuclear tests. Do you believe that's how bad things are today? And is it so bad that we might just have to wait for the next 3.5 years and ride out the rest of the Trump presidency? Because, I mean, it seems impossible to make this man child in the White House, see reason. Also, I'd like your thoughts on whether you believe that this could lead to some sort of a realignment of geopolitical forces and interests, given that, India and the US, of course, I beg your pardon, India and Russia already have a long standing relationship. And now we've seen President Putin saying he's going to come to India later this year, and President and Prime Minister Modi all set to visit China later this month for the SEO summit.
Okay, the first question I think is the most important one for our Indian audience, and I do not share this general mood. And I would say the general statements coming from many experts right now that this is the lowest point in the US India relations. I don't share this. I'm still convinced that this is quite transactional and Trump can change very quickly his mind, writing today that India has a dead economy, and tomorrow writing that India has the most vibrant and promising economy in the world, which actually is reflecting the reality because India is en route to becoming world's economy number 3, probably in this decade. And that means quite of a good prospect for the US-India trade portfolio, no matter the strategic partnership between India and Russia, because the structure of the Indian American trade volume will be very different from the one based on Russian commodities or arms sales or other important goods from Russia. So this is the first thing. I would argue it's quite transactional. Right now, we have this highly volatile and toxic environment on the global arena. We have two clear geopolitical and geoeconomic blocks. On the one hand, America, this new America, highly mercantilist, very aggressive in terms of global power projection, trying to bring in its orbit every single so-called swing state, middle power. We heard about the advantages that Pakistan has in South Asia. In fact, I would go a step further by claiming that probably United States sees in Pakistan the only opportunity to re-enter South Asia after being kicked out of from the region with following the fiasco in Afghanistan. Okay, that's I think is the transactional part. The other block being China, Russia, and India has very good cards as a geopolitical bridge builder, as a kind of a state, a middle power that's now emerging on the global arena in terms of trade, economy. It has its own power projection in the region and beyond, and it can actually, it doesn't want to pick sides, and that's the big problem, because United States want to put India on par with Pakistan, but India is in its own league right now, and it's incomparable geopolitically with other players. So that's a big problem for the Americans. That's not so much the problems for the Chinese and the Russians. They're quite on good terms with
Yeah.
this kind of position for understandable reasons. And right now, this equidistance that India is playing in trying to deepen the relationship, the strategic partnership with Russia, but also to normalize the relationship with China for the sake of economic growth and transparency of the trade relations, I think is the most strategically the most wise position that India can have. And of course, it has its price, because the decision on not siding strategically with America, and this is not going to happen. And I think Trump will take time. It will take time for Trump to understand that, but he will understand that. And that is why I'm quite convinced that he will turn sides, and there will be better prospects for improving the relationship. And not to forget, both Modi and Trump have a very strong chemistry as leaders of their nation.
Unfortunately, Velina,
The
I know a
romance
lot has
between
been
both of
said about that chemistry in the past, but there are many who feel that it's flown right out of the window, in the aftermath of Operation Sindoor and the tariff wars that Trump is waging against India. But, good to know that you are far more optimistic about the India-US relationship than many other people are at this point in time, and you believe that things could change any minute with Trump. After all, he is the most unpredictable and transactional leader in the world. General Satish Dua, let me ask you this question, sir. You know, as a military man who understands China as well as he understands Pakistan, I'm sure you would be wary of Beijing at any point in time. I don't think we can yet come to the conclusion that relations between India and China have normalized since Galwan, but things seem to be improving. Do you believe that the damage that we've seen to the India US relationship in the recent past could, in fact, mean India not only getting closer to Russia, which shouldn't surprise anybody given that it is, of course, a long standing relationship, but also in some ways, perhaps, realigning its interests with Beijing, because in recent weeks, Beijing also seems to have changed its tone. We've seen their foreign office in very warm terms welcoming Prime Minister Modi, for instance, to the upcoming SCO summit that he's scheduled to attend in China on the 31st of August. So as a military person, would you tread cautiously as far as China is concerned, or do you believe that we actually could see some sort of realignment here thanks to Trump?
So I would put it this way. you know, as far as geopolitics is concerned, it's very hard real politic here. National interests are foremost. We don't stand on egos. Just like I would agree with Valina when she said that things could just change tomorrow, and if they change, then we'll again be talking of to quote Valina, we'll be talking of Modi and Trump chemistry, and that could happen. So I'm
Yes.
all I, no, I'm trying to say that these things are known to have happened. Who would have thought that uh, after Pearl Harbor attack, US and Japan would be, I mean, they would be very strong allies. So things like that do happen. But to your question, our relations with Russia have been strong, will become stronger. If we are not going to, I mean, just put it transactionally, if you're not going to buy F-35, then Su-57 is there and joint venture is on the card, things like that. But about China, I don't think, okay, let me start that again. Ever since Galwan happened 5 years ago, while we have been talking to China at various levels, military levels, working mechanism level, and at higher levels of higher political levels, we have been engaging in talks. A lot of friction points have been sorted out. Only a couple of them remain, right? So that's on one side. But on the other hand, our bilateral trade has increased over the last 5 years. I don't have the figures offhand, but our trade has increased. Now, with this little ruffle in our relationship with the US, sure, it is geopolitics may not be a zero-sum game, but the fact remains that it is bound to impact our relations with China. We have already been engaging with them on the trade front. We have been talking to them regarding the line of actual control, and now that the SCO participation by the Prime Minister in SCO seems to be a reality. When that happens, we are bound to increase our or enhance our bilateral ties. What shape that takes will remain to be seen. Don't forget that President Trump has been talking against BRICS. So the moment now we have a common adversary in those tariff terms, we will talk about. I'm sure we'll discuss other things over there, which America will not like. Like whenever there's a Quad meeting, China does not like that. So it is bound to happen. It will not. Will India go and sit in the lap of China? No, but we will certainly have better relations. We will try to
Yes.
iron out things where it suits our national interests, and I'm sure China will also keep that in mind. But
Absolutely.
any enhancement, last sentence here, any enhancement of relations in any dimension with China is going to rankle the United States.
Absolutely. Whether Donald Trump likes it or not, whether the United States likes it or not, fact is India has made it abundantly clear it will continue to exercise its strategic autonomy, and nothing can change that. On that note, Velina Chakarova and Lieutenant General Satish Dua, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to both of you. Thank you for sharing your time and perspective with us. All right, on that note, let me now introduce our other special guest. Joining me on Global Pulse now is David Vance. He is a British political commentator and author. Mr. Vance, thank you so much for joining me on Global Pulse tonight. We've all heard that very strong statement that you've made on Pakistan and its Army Chief Asim Munir's unhinged rant and nuclear blackmail, not just against India, but the entire world. And you seem to be of the opinion that it's high time the world cut off all ties with Pakistan till it started behaving like a civilized nation. Interestingly, we also have a very important comment from a former Pentagon official, Michael Rubin, who has described Asim Munir as Osama bin Laden in a suit. What's your take on that, sir? And what do you make of the comments that Asim Munir made from American soil, no less?
Well, that's right. I mean, that comment is actually pretty accurate. He is Osama bin Laden in a suit, and he should have been arrested in Florida when he made the comment in the first place. And to me, it's such an insult to India, insofar as, America allows this guy to come from Pakistan to the US, where he threatens India, and then he threatens the whole world with nuclear destruction if he doesn't get his way. I mean, this is what I've argued for some time. I believe Pakistan is a rogue state. These are rogue individuals. They should be isolated. They should not be rewarded. And until they act, as you rightly observe as civilized people. Yeah, that's what he said. We'll take half the world down with us. Well, I'm sorry. That makes him and Pakistan unfit to be in the nation of the League of Civilized Nations, you know. So I was very distressed at the comment that he made, but the fact he made it on American soil, that's an outrage. Oh, I mean, the US surely can see the danger that this constitutes, not just to India, but to the world. We can't have nuclear blackmail, surely.
Well, you know, one couldn't agree more with you, Mr. Vance, but what do you make of the fact that Asim Munir has blackmailed not just India but the entire world and seems to have got away with it? He did it from American soil, and far from issuing a strong condemnation of Asim Munir, the Trump administration is absolutely silent on this issue. If anything, in recent weeks, we have seen Donald Trump repeatedly reward this rogue nation, this terror nation called Pakistan. This man who really has been the mastermind of terror attacks such as the Pahalgam terror attack, has been lionized by the Trump administration. He was treated like a state guest at the White House recently, in the month of June to be precise. He was invited for the second time in 2 months to the United States of America. You know, General Michael Kurilla, who's recently retired as the US CENTCOM commander, called Pakistan a phenomenal partner in counter-terrorism. Do we need to remind the Americans that this is the same Pakistan that was harboring Osama bin Laden for a decade in Abbottabad, near Rawalpindi?
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you. I mean, I worry about the fact that the President Trump, seems to be getting some very bad advice. Very bad advice. I mean, we saw it over the tariffs he wanted to impose on India. Compare that to what he's done with China. So we've seen that. That seems strange. But as you said, subsequent to that, it's not strategically good for the US or the world to try and punish India when the nation that should be punished, if any, is most definitely Pakistan. And I don't understand the American interest here, because India is the rising power, the rising superpower. So I would have thought Trump should align with Prime Minister Modi in India. That would be logical to me. So all I can think to answer your question is there must be bad actors within the Trump administration that Pakistan has managed to get some kind of control over, and they're selling these lies. Pakistan can't be a partner in fighting terrorism because it's a terrorist state. I mean, that's obvious. And as you say, history shows that. Pakistan has consistently supported acts of terror, so it can't be a partner. But India has opposed acts of terror, so it should be a partner. So Donald Trump, I mean, I'm a Trump supporter, right? But he needs to waken up, and his administration need to waken up, and they need to understand that it's in everyone's interest for India and the US to align. They should marginalize Pakistan. I believe it should be financially crippled. We need regime change in Islamabad. We need to have a nation that doesn't threaten the world. And at the moment it does. And that's why I feel sympathy for India, because you're beside them. And, you know, it's unacceptable for the US to cozy up to Pakistan, because Pakistanis they are acting in bad faith. And, you know, this is not good. This is not good for the US.
Well, you know, you're quite right. India and the United States should ideally be natural partners. We're talking about the world's largest and oldest democracies. Not too long ago, President Biden, during Prime Minister Modi's state visit to Washington, called the India-US partnership the defining partnership of the 21st century. And yet, 2 years down the road, here we are today with Donald Trump wielding a sledgehammer, and many saying that he has taken India-US ties to their lowest in close to 3 decades. Mr. Vance, what would you say to those in India who are convinced that Donald Trump is acting out of personal pique? The tariffs he's imposed on India have nothing to do with trade or Russian oil. or the fact that he's even wooing Pakistan, a terror nation, is essentially to needle India. And why is that? Because India seems to have, well, bruised Donald Trump's very fragile and large ego by refusing to give him credit for the ceasefire between India and Pakistan in the month of May. The fact that India continues to exercise strategic autonomy in foreign policy, the fact that India refuses to kiss the ring, as some would say, and the fact that poor Donald Trump, we've not nominated him for a Nobel Peace Prize that he so desperately seeks.
Okay, well, I mean, I understand those criticisms, and I can fully understand how they are made. But, Donald Trump doesn't just waking up, in the morning and think of these things. He's got lots of advisors who tell him things and who recommend things. And so rather than necessarily go after President Trump on this, I would go after others within his regime. But that said, I think the points you make, I kind of agree with him as well. He tried to claim the glory for the ceasefire, which had nothing to do with him. I understand stuff like that. Has he a fragile ego? Yeah, he probably has as well. You're probably right about that. But in all of this, if I think he tries to act in the US interest. And no matter who you are, this cannot be seen to be in the US interest. It alienates a very important, crucial partner, India. I can well understand Indian people being very unhappy about this, but I'm unhappy about it as well. And this is something we've talked about previously. The Pakistan diplomatic influence in Washington, in London, in other places is surprisingly strong. And I wouldn't underestimate that. I think that they have obviously been working within the Trump regime, and Trump's bought into it. But you are right in your criticism, and I understand them, but I think there's more to it than just Donald Trump alone, precious ego or otherwise. I think someone's told him that this is a good idea, but you can see it and your viewers can see it. It's a really, really bad thing to align with a terrorist nation. So that's why all my sympathies lie with India. All my criticism is directed at Washington and at Pakistan. They're the people who should not be cooperating. These photographs are very annoying to see this. This guy, the Pakistani Army Chief, he should be behind bars. That's where he should be for the threats that he's made. And I just admire India's Prime Minister Modi's tolerance at the provocation, because that's what it is. This is provocation against India. But India has shown great skill over the last number of years, and hopefully it will continue to do that. And I just hope that India can get the diplomatic grip over Trump and his regime to make them understand that nuclear blackmail is bad for this world, not just Pakistan, not just India, for the world. Pakistan's the blackmail. Pakistan needs to be sorted out once and for all. You cannot have a nuclear rogue regime, and yet we do.
Well, you're quite right there. Though I have to say a very interesting choice of words there, the Trump regime. Many feel that we are sort of dealing with a very dictatorial figure here. And it's also interesting when you say that it's not Trump alone, he has bad advisors. But I really wonder, Mr. Vance, whatever number of advisors he may have in the White House or in his inner circle, does he really listen to anyone? Because Trump, as we know, is Trump. While I understand the point you make about how Pakistan lobbying is very, very strong in Washington, D.C., and they've probably outdone India on that front. No country has played the United States better than Pakistan, I think, in recent decades. But if Donald Trump were listening to you, what would your advice to him be, Mr. Vance? Because honestly, he seems to be doing everything wrong at the moment. Not only has he unleashed trade wars on the entire world, but he's deeply hurting a very important strategic relationship between India and the United States while rewarding a terror state like Pakistan. Some believe he is doing it for personal vested interests. For instance, the crypto deal that his family, seems to have with Pakistan. Others believe that he is doing this just to needle India.
Yeah, great questions. Absolutely great questions. I mean, what I would say to President Trump, were he to listen to, I mean, he does have a vice president who's got the same name as me, but I'm no relation to JD Vance. So if he was to listen to this Vance, I would simply tell him, President Trump, you're making a big mistake. It is not in your interest, US interest, to alienate India, to treat India so badly. You are aligning with a rogue nation, and it's just not in your best interest. It's not in the best interest of the world. It's not in the best interest of the region as well. I mean, India is such a strategic partner, or should be. And I lament the fact that this is not more deeply understood. President Trump is a smart guy. He's a savvy guy. He should understand that if you're back in Pakistan, you're back in the wrong regime. You're really not doing the right thing. And he maybe needs to be told that forcefully to his face. But I mean, President Trump's like everybody else. We can all make errors of judgment. And this is a complete error of judgment in my view, from the tariffs all the way through. This is all wrong. And, I think the good thing is we can flag it up, and we can get the message out, hopefully, to people maybe within the Trump regime that, listen, guys, you should not be supporting this failed terrorist state of Pakistan. And hopefully maybe that'll make some impact. But, what more can I say? I wish I his personal advisor. I can assure you I would be doing my very best, because I think it's in the best interest of the world. India is so important, so central in the region, the US, the global hegemony, and they should be together. There shouldn't be this conflict, and it's wrong, and it's not India's fault. It's coming from Washington for definite. I agree with you in that, and also presumably with Pakistan diplomatic input.
There are many, Mr. Vance, who are saying that the Indian government should actually lodge a formal complaint with the Trump administration, given that Asim Munir's nuclear threats were made from American soil. Is that something you agree with? And do you believe that, at the very least, Donald Trump should condemn Asim Munir's comments?
Totally agree with you. Those comments are unacceptable from anywhere, actually, but they're particularly unacceptable from US. This is the point you rightly observe. The Trump himself should categorically condemn these comments, because they're inflammatory. I mean, they're really how is India supposed to respond to the sort of comments that this guy has made? And he shouldn't be allowed to travel back, and he should be in a travel ban, right? There should be a travel ban for people like Munir and for this regime. That's how you do it. You isolate the regime, just as if they were North Korea. Isolate them, financially punish them, so that they understand you cannot behave like this. You don't go around threatening your neighbor with bombs. You don't threaten a nuclear holocaust if you're put upon. You don't do that. And, so I would most definitely support India if it was were to lodge a complaint. It should do. I mean, there should be strong representation made to Washington over this. Mm-hmm. And, as you said, if this happened anywhere in the world, it's unacceptable. But in America, it's provocative to India. So I understand, I can understand you guys being extremely offended by it, but, so am I.
Glad to hear that. Yes, Indians are very deeply offended, and also I think it's absolutely ironical that the man who's projecting himself as the biggest peacemaker in the world and who is hankering after a Nobel Peace Prize is at the same time rewarding and flirting with a terror organization. Final question, David Vance, before we let you go. For many years now, many geopolitical experts have said that the United States was increasingly looking at India as a counterweight to a revisionist and hegemonic China. Now that we see so much friction in India-US ties thanks to Donald Trump, how do you think Beijing is looking at all of this?
Great question. And I mean, Beijing must love it. They must be so happy. Because, as you say, this is unbalancing what we thought was a good thing by punishing India, by taking this route. the only people who win, as far as I can see, is Beijing and Pakistan. Well, who on earth thinks that's a good idea? I mean, the China-Pakistan axis is an axis of evil, an axis of terror. So there's no reason why that regime in Beijing should be rewarded. And it also annoyed me, by the way, that Donald Trump has imposed higher tariffs on India than he has on China. I mean, come on, who's your partner? No, I think this is Trump will have to roll back from this. Now, yeah, I understand. I mean, that tweet you've got up from Trump, I don't understand why Donald Trump is doing this. I honestly don't. I'm not sure if he's been drinking the Kool-Aid or what, but he should not be saying these things. He should be trying to work with Prime Minister Modi, with India, to counter China. That's in his interest. So, look, sometimes when you come to international diplomacy, honestly, sometimes it makes little sense. And this makes no sense. And I surely hope that America reverses course on this one and realizes that what's in Washington's best interest is also in India's best interest. And that's not what we're seeing. So there you go. There's the two guys shaking hands. Donald Trump should remember that. Prime Minister Modi is an ally, and he's not being treated like that. And that's shameful.
I think we will all agree with you 100% there. I mean, Trump needs to course correct here. Really, he seems to be getting it all wrong, but really, who is going to tell him that? And one is reminded of Henry Kissinger's famous words that being an enemy of the United States is dangerous, but being a friend can be fatal. We certainly hope it doesn't go that way as far as the India-US relationship is concerned. But David Vance, it's been a pleasure talking to you. Thank you for being on Global Pulse.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye, David. All right, it's been an interesting conversation with a whole host of geopolitical experts on what's happening between India and Pakistan and India and the United States. One can only hope that Donald Trump will finally see reason and stop wooing a terror state like Pakistan. Enough is enough. It is high time Donald Trump issued a strong condemnation of Asim Munir's unhinged rant against India and threat to the entire world that was made recently from American soil. Clearly, this cannot be tolerated by any civilized country in the world. That's all the time we have on this edition of Global Pulse. Thanks so much for watching. Do join us again tomorrow.